Everything Has a Price by Grist, a story set in the Star Atlas metaverse. Generative art was created with stable diffusion. Narration by me, Bella, a synthetic narrator from Elevenlabs. Everything has a price. Xylee learned this early in life. She had built a reputation amongst a loose band of mercenaries as the pilot you sent jobs to when you didn't want to take the risk yourself. When the unknown client sent over the contract proposal, Ship placed it in quarantine as she quickly placed an order for a complete scan. Seconds later, Ship displayed the lowest offer for a security sweep. She thanked the neuroquant for the insane price to complete the job, but her nails dug into her palm as the familiar rage boiled. The lilting voice of Ansola echoed in her mind. One must always maintain manners, even in this business of ours. Within a second, the all-clear chimed. She always wondered if the synthetic superintelligences felt such activities beneath them, scanning Ansible packets for cautious customers. Within a nanosecond, they could plot a fleet of warships through hundreds of jump points, using a minuscule fraction of their processing power. But everything has a price. Even ensuring data sent party to party was clean, void of virus or mimetic storm, by an intelligence billions of times more vast than the most enhanced organic brain. She tapped her right bicuspid with her tongue, quick tactile command, and the familiar heat shimmer distortion in her vision. The interior of her cabin flickered as the tint shifted to a soft purple hue. The fidelity snapped in, and the cabin opened up with the visual applications of the filter. Lavender Dream. This was the only filter she owned that wasn't distracting. The effect was just enough to give an ethereal quality to the familiarity of the Ombue's cabin. The lines and geometry of the actual was the canvas on which the filter painted, providing a pleasing aesthetic surface detail of the verse. Xylee often chose to work with an aesthetically pleasant type of a filter, nothing too immersive. She preferred admiring the glint of wavelets on the ocean and not diving down below, for virtual sea was so deep it might as well be infinite. That was the problem. She knew many who never came up for air and stayed down in the depths of the virtual until even a filter seemed bland. She wasn't a luddy. She enjoyed the wonders of waking dreams now and then. She just preferred to keep one foot on the solid floor of reality. Whatever this new contract was, she hoped it paid well. Just a few more contracts, she thought, and I can afford a pair of new eyes. She'd recently upgraded her thread, as well as Ship's compute power, and now their interactions were far more fluid and intuitive. She had a ton of Atlas sandbagged from her last contract. This new job should be enough. There was a clinic on Saffron's wake that would have taken the Atlas she had and sold her a pair of Clarities, but she'd backed out of the offer. It wasn't really wise to skimp on New Eyes, the most advanced gengineered product in all of Gallia. Xylee's family had been planet-planted. None of them were gengineered. Her thread didn't really count in her mind. The gene edits were minor. And to her, threads were old tech. Hell, they had clunky neural laces centuries ago. Without a pair of eyes, Xylee accessed the verse like the majority of biologics, via organic contact lenses. When she chose to spend some time in full virtual, it was with her camstick or a stasis pod. She couldn't afford eyes or a deep thread. Not yet. An obnoxious jangle of Segirith cave singing assaulted her ears and pulled Xylee out of her reverie. Quick blink code at the green sphere that floated above and to the right of where she sat in the rear cabin. The volume level became somewhat tolerable. The cave singing sounded like a mountain of granite being obliterated by a hailstorm of diamonds. No. Just no. With another quick blink code, she opened the line of communication. Ship had deployed several firewalls as part of its own security suite. She also ran a sexcan scrub with her thread before she was ready to communicate. Better safe than sorry. She gave herself a mental pat on the back for paying for the neuroquant sweep when the contract proposal was sent over. If she had known who the contract was from, she might have passed. The all-clear notification from her thread scan was the scent of cinnamon tea, and the sigh of wind through a grove of trees. Lavender Dream was a keeper. So, this would be a Tufa contract. What madness had they brewed up now? It seemed to her that every single contract offered by the Tufa Merc brokers had a catch. Over the years, she'd been selective and had only accepted a few of their outrageous contracts. But they paid so well the temptation was too much to walk away from, plus all the Atlas she'd earned had been very well spent. Her liquid nanite combat suit, Tufa contract. Her thread, Tufa contract. The Vizus Ombwe that she was now cocooned in, Tufa contract. And these offers always arrived at moments in her career when she wanted some new tech or weapon that was obscenely expensive. She closed her eyes, the standard eyes of a biologic with clarity contacts, but they were still just contacts. She'd recently been mulling over the upgrade, almost obsessing on the purchase, and now, look who showed up with an offer. The Tufa. It was as if her skin crawled, and she almost gave the command to close all communication channels, but then Ship began to translate the proposal details. The translation had taken a ridiculous few seconds, eons for a synthetic. Ship wasn't some low-level friend bot, its substrate was latticed layered smart matter. The damn processing unit was twice her weight, but the size of her fist. With its recent upgrade, Ship was a formidable synthetic intelligence. The task of translating a language that included words conjured on the spot was an issue, as well as there being thousands of obscure Tufa dialects, which all shared the custom of being reluctant to arrive at a specific point in the conversation. That would be considered the beginning. The Tufa talked around the idea, threaded words through needles, and wove a tapestry of confusion. Xylee recalled hearing, at some janky orbital above the blasted surface of Second Chance, why the first envoy from the Council of Peace failed the first diplomatic mission. The envoy was eventually ground to dust, not from malice, because they couldn't spend another standard year in negotiations. In the end, all that was established was that the Tufa would no longer attack any exploration or merchant ship that strayed into a 30-million-kilometer bubble around their sector. Most of the time. The Segurath cave singing faded. Ship sent a soft tickle, a brief static electric charge, on her forearm to let her know it had prepared the translation. The voice used for the Tufa was one Ship had created, melodious and clear, an inside joke of Ship's since Xylee had wondered long ago if the actual Tufa sounded like an avalanche that took a century to complete. The first translation audio Ship had created for her was that of a silken bard with perfect diction. "Greetings. It has been brought to my attention, over the course of several iterations of Nova Mother, may her grace soothe the layers of the structure of your mind and personhood that your exploits are worthy of esteem. My client, one of utmost vigor and stealthy fortitude, who, due to the station of their position of leadership within the very core of one of the councils of advisors to the mighty Tufa triumvirate of power and might, and due to your previous execution of multiple contracts, along with the nature of your discretion that I made a point in detailing, to the best of my ability, the expansive suite of your talent and—" As the preamble droned on, Xylee gave Ship a subvocal command. She reminded Ship that the Tufa translations need not be accurate. Ship was to scrub the Tufa's communication and script a subroutine to produce a succinct translation. This Tufa seemed to be even more verbose than usual. When there finally was a pause, she replied that she might be interested, but she needed actual details and did not want to sit here until the heat death of the universe to arrive at the particulars of the contract. She thanked the Tufa for the offer, but was clear she wanted to be given the specifics of the job. Now. There was a delay as Ship made an effort to trim down the Tufa's response. A whiff of warm air from the vent above and a low, rolling tone let her know that Ship needed a few more seconds. And finally, "You are to commandeer a prototype Pierce X6 from the 12th War Fleet of the Council of Peace to complete my client's collection. You are instructed to subdue the crew, as well as to guarantee the crew are not able to report the theft to the Council before you have delivered the ship, nor at any point in the future. You will then transport the X6 to these coordinates. Camwi system, 1119, BX197829. Xylee was about to disconnect in disgust. This was such an insane proposition on every level. Plus, she knew what the Tufa meant by subduing the crew. And commandeer, a prototype version of the workhorse of the cops. What? Every Tufa broker knew she could never again enter council space, along with any sector controlled by Ooster, Oni, and most of all, Mud. And that laughable cover story, steal an X6 for some mysterious client's collection, as in a fucking Starship collection? But the best part, she was expected to deliver the ship to a region of Gallia that was on the brink of war. There was no way the Ooster would continue to allow the Oni to keep sniffing around whatever they were constructing around that neutron star in the HRZ. Xylee had learned how to survive out here in the dark of the high-risk zone, where the only constant was chaos and survival, most of all by not being stupid. Her skills were known and her reputation was secure. She knew she was one of the few mercs who would be offered a job by the Tufa. But what insanity was all of this? How would she ever be expected to even deliver the ship without being reduced to a glittering field of debris? A moment before she gave the command to disconnect the Ansible connection, Ship translated the final contract details the Tufa shared. It was hard to surprise herself. She wasn't one to drill down and discover how her mind worked, but it astonished her how quickly her previous concerns winked out of existence. The revulsion of what she would have to do was already cast beyond the horizon. The near impossibility of being able to close the contract and deliver the X6 faded away to the back of her mind. The contract offer was several times larger than any she had ever accepted, even more than those horrible jobs she had taken long ago in order to purchase a starship and get out of the system of her homeworld. Those type of contracts and bounties paid very well, but Xylee often saw the looks in their eyes when she couldn't find sleep. When someone realized, when they gave up, the light in their eyes always faded away. What mattered most to her was that the amount of Atlas she could earn would allow her to live a life she found herself longing for, despite the way such daydreams made her feel. Even the retainer was more than most contracts she'd completed. She could pay off her brother's debt. She could hire enough pilots and crew to field a fleet of mercenaries that would be strong enough to dictate the terms of every contract. She could buy her new eyes and upgrade to a deep thread. With this amount, she could even buy a small fleet of Mambas. The notion was almost comical. She smiled to herself, thinking, no more solo jobs. She could finally afford to find her family. Who were you trying to fool, Z? She slammed a door in her mind, and the voice was silenced. Once the job was done, she would find this family, not the family she had been born of, the family she needed to discover, her tribe, people like herself who walked a path that was littered with regret. Her people. Deep down, that was what all this work had been for, right? To be a commander of a... No, she just didn't want to do this alone any longer. It had been years since Ansola was killed. The layers of tech she had built up to protect herself was a heavy burden. She feared if she kept going on like this, she would disappear forever. She didn't want to lose the young Xylee who used to lay on the dingy plastine panels of the roof of their modest home on New Belize, that little girl who lay awake all night counting the flashes of starships winking into no space. Ship sent a rapid pulse through the hull, like a subtle cough to get her attention. She hadn't responded to the Tufa. If she accepted the contract, she knew she would have less than a 5% chance of succeeding. A tiny chance of living to regret ever agreeing to another Tufa contract. Her command was just a millimeter glance towards her left. Ship formally accepted the offer and pulled the contract, then severed the communication link. Xylee had spent decades, her subjective years dilated from all the relativistic travel of impulse engine burns between jumps, sculpting every atom of her body and sharpening the surface of her mind as a blade of deadly purpose. With Ship as her graphene nanotube armored shell. She would arrive, she would wait, and then she would slice through the contract with ease. She made her way to the cockpit, and climbed into the pilot seat. Her mind was clear. The storm was still far off. That storm would arrive soon enough. Xylee held both hands in front of her, palms up. As she rotated them down, her flight sticks shot out of their nest in the console and fell into her grip. Her gloved hands were on full haptics, and it felt as if the flight controls were suspended in an energy field that pulsated along her palms. She gripped the control surfaces with the force of anticipation. Her head tilted a millimeter towards her right shoulder, and Ship gave her command of the impulse engines. The canopy switched from opaque to transparent. The dark of the infinite horizon lay before her, her audience a host of 1,000,000,000,000 stars. The engines roared, her seat's G-foam cocooned her, and the Ombwe was soon just another glittering point lost in an ocean of light.